Every now and again, I like to cause a little bit of trouble with my wife. She'll ask me to help around the house, whether it be do the dishes or vacuum, something like that. And I'll ever so gently remind her that actually God created you to be the helper to me. And that God said I'm supposed to rule over you. Well, the reason why I'm still alive to tell you this is because she knows that I'm just messing with her. That I don't actually believe that and mean it. I'm just being a bit of a jerk. That's the reality. But the thing is, I've encountered a lot of people who see these verses in Scripture and kind of scratch their heads at it and go, well, why is it that God says these things? Why are these things in the Bible? So that's what we'll be taking a look at in this video. Hi, my name's Todd, and we're going to look at women in the Bible. Aside from those passages in Genesis, there are plenty of other places where women just aren't treated as good as men. In researching this topic, I found this one spot in the Ten Commandments where people say that actually women are regarded as property. It's that commandment where it says that you shouldn't covet your neighbor's ox or his donkey or his maidservant and his wife, which kind of gives the smell of a woman being property. The reality is you don't actually have to look too far to find woman as property, because in the book of Deuteronomy, if a woman's raped, but she's not engaged, all the rapist has to do is pay 50 shekels of silver to the father, and all of a sudden she becomes his wife. So, yeah, she's property. In Revelation, women aren't regarded as particularly clean because you can only be part of the 144,000 who are saved if you haven't defiled yourself with a woman. And you can go all throughout Scripture and find similar things where women should be subjugated, they should do what they're told, they're dirty, and that they're property. There's plenty of examples out there. But people try to resolve this in a few different ways. Some say, well, guess what? Jesus, his life and resurrection fixed all that. But that doesn't really add up, because a lot of these statements made about women happen after the resurrection. Other people will just say, oh, well, you know what, it's just a sign of the times. People were just jerks back then. Patriarchy ruled the world because we were all hunter-gatherers and this animal instinct, blah, blah, blah. Well, the problem with that is it doesn't actually allow us to use the Bible as a tool for spiritual development. Because what will happen is, well, you'll just disregard anything you don't like as, well, it's just a sign of the times. And guess what? We're going to disregard anything that we don't like, and therefore it renders the Bible not a very effective tool for spiritual development. Now, this is why I turn to biblical symbolism and allegory to understand things. And in particular, I use 18th century scientist, philosopher, and theologian Emanuel Swedenborg, because he gives us a picture of consistent imagery throughout the Bible. The symbols work throughout the whole thing. And what he says about women is that women are symbols for goodness, for love, for something that we're attracted to. It's not necessarily a good love, not necessarily something a good desire, but it is something we are attracted to. Men, on the other hand, are basically the intellectual side, the truth, the wisdom, that kind of side of things. And so when the Scripture says that man is to rule over the woman, that Adam is supposed to rule over Eve, it's about saying that our head is supposed to rule over our heart. This is a much more sensible way of looking at things, because what happens in the story of Adam and Eve? It's our heart. It's Eve who has this desire for the forbidden fruit, and she eats of it. And what does she do? Well, she corrupts Adam. She corrupts our thinking. That's exactly what we do. When we have a desire to do something that isn't right, well, we find a way to justify it. How many people have found a way to justify cheating on their taxes? Right? It's not right, but we say, oh, well, it's not fair the government takes this money from us. We justify it. Our thinking becomes corrupted. On the flip side of it, if the intellectual side rules over, it can win. You go to the grocery store, right? You're at the self-checkout center, and you think, you know what? I think I'd like to just pass this over without scanning it in. I deserve to take this box of chocolates. But then the intellectual side kicks in and says, you know what? No. I'm ruling over that desire. This isn't right. We're not going to do it. Scan it, pay for it, and be honest. And that's a situation where the intellect rules over the man rules over the woman. That's the kind of illustration we have here. This works throughout all of these scripture passages regarding women. Because when you look at Revelation, the 144,000 who are saved if they haven't defiled themselves with a woman, what's it about? I mean, it's not about sexual practices. Because if, defiling yourself with a woman prevented you from entrance to heaven, well, just about half the population wouldn't be entering heaven, right? So that's not what it's about. It's about putting yourself and joining yourself with some sort of an evil desire, something that you find attractive, that you've indulged in and you've made part of your life. That's what defiling yourself with a woman is really about. The Samson and Delilah story, you get the similar kind of message. Samson wants a Philistine woman. You're not supposed to marry the Philistines. Why? Because the Philistines are a symbol of a faith that isn't actually alive. It's not actually active. You know this stuff, but you don't actually do it. That's attractive, right? If I wasn't actually having to walk the walk, well, that's a much easier faith to have. So we do find it attractive. And so Samson wants to marry Delilah. So he does marry her, but she comes with her own problems because she wants to know the secret of his power. So she nags and nags and nags and nags. And we've all had that situation where somebody nags us to death, right? Somebody's living in your house, and the first time they ask you to do something stupid, it doesn't really bother you. You go, that's annoying, and you move on. But as they keep doing these annoying things and pounds and pounds and pounds, and you want to give them a piece of your mind. And for a while, you restrain, you withhold, you say, no, I'm not going to yell at them, I'm just going to be cool. But eventually, guess what? You hit your breaking point, and you yell at them. You go, no, you shouldn't do this. You're a terrible roommate, you're a terrible spouse, whatever it is. You let them have it. Well, that doesn't work out too well for us. Just like it didn't work out too well when Samson gave in to his desire and told Delilah his secrets. The intellectual side needs to rule over the heart side because the heart often just craves bad things. I mean, that's just the reality. And I think culturally we know this. I found this song by Kenny Chesney called You and Tequila. And what he says is, it's always our favorite sins that do us in. And that's what the scripture's trying to tell us. It's not the things that we aren't tempted by that get us in trouble. Like, I get in no trouble for murdering people. Stabbing someone to death just isn't my thing. I don't get my jollies out of it. It's not a temptation. But I am tempted regularly to be a jerk, to say some clever, witty comment that just takes someone down a notch. That's my temptation. It's the sin that I enjoy that gets me in trouble with usually my wife. Now, I can make all sorts of excuses saying, well, that's the way I've always been, that's something I enjoy doing, that's the way I was raised, and well, there's actually some truth to that part of it. It doesn't make it actually right. The fact is, I enjoy it, and that's the problem. That's where I haven't let my intellectual side rule over the heart. This is why in the Sodom and Gomorrah story, it's Lot's wife who turns back to look at the city. Lot, the intellectual side, says, let's get out of here, it's a terrible place, we need to go. But the wife, she's attracted to it. She's like, I kind of miss that. And that's how often we regard the things that we do that aren't good. We still have a love for them. And this is why throughout Scripture you'll see this image of women being the downfall of men. Because they corrupt the thinking. Whether it's Eve tempting Adam, whether it's David being tempted by Bathsheba, or Samson and Delilah, or just keep on going. Women are the downfall of men because it's our desires that get us in trouble. So it's not for nothing that men of the day would have regarded women as something to be wary of. And that's why people of today should regard the things that we desire as something to be wary of. Because if you look at all these situations in Scripture where men, or where women are the downfall of men, you can honestly say that things would have turned out better if men had actually ruled over women, if men had actually regarded woman as the helper. Things would have turned out better. Now, I don't know that I'm going to say that exactly to my wife, and if I do, you'll know why I've never make another video, because she's whacked me on the head and got rid of me. But the reality is that's what those stories are trying to tell us, is that men, the intellectual side, are supposed to rule over the woman, the heart side. So there you go. I hope that's helpful. I find it very useful to understand that for myself and keep an eye on my desires. I wish you the best in keeping a good eye on yours. All the best, and God bless.